When Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz wrote a New York Times op-ed in August titled "America Deserves a Servant Leader," he described a leadership style that is growing in popularity among some of the world's greatest companies, including his own. In this interview with Carrier Management Suzanne Sclafane, Marcel Schwantes, an executive coach with leadership from the core, who also spreads the word about servant leadership, refers to the op-ed and gives a brief overview of what servant leadership is and what it is not.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what servant leadership is and what it's not, and what are some of the common misconceptions about it?
Yeah, well, people think of this idea of servant leadership as a new concept, or like another buzz term, but it's been around for centuries. And about 45 years ago, a guy by the name of Robert Greenleaf, well, he was smart enough to introduce it in the modern corporate setting when he wrote his famous essay, Servant as Leader. So what it is, well, the simplest definition I know of is that, in the words of Greenleaf himself, the servant leader has a natural feeling that he wants to serve first, then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. That's a direct quote. And it sounds conflicting, right? I mean, how can I be a servant and lead? I mean, people will walk all over me. That's one of the complaints I hear.
Right.
That's why it's so hard for those bosses and executives that come from traditionally top-down command and control leadership styles. It's hard to make the shift. And so the idea is to turn the organizational pyramid, if you will, on its head, so that the leader now leads from the bottom up. So, Suzanne, picture this image where, the leader's on the bottom supporting those people that follow him or her by lifting them up. And that's what the servant leader does, by looking after their needs, by developing them, by sharing power, building relationships, walking their corners, just being interested in the lives of their people, because that's what's going to get the best out of them.
Now, many of our readers and our listeners are managers and aspiring leaders, and I know that some of them worry about the fact that they weren't born with qualities like charisma or what some people refer to as executive presence. And you've described it a little bit. Some of your articles and presentations refer to the fact that everyone is capable of the core activities of servant leadership. I guess tell us more about that. What are some of the behaviors that set servant leaders apart so they can influence employees and get the most out of their teams without being bossy or what you described as kind of a command and control person?
Well, yeah, charisma is nice, but it's typically not sustainable. It's more ego and bravado. I do think that most people are capable of developing the qualities of servant leaders, but also few are actually able or even aspire to. You got to remember, humility is a strength of the servant leader, and that's going to eliminate a lot of people right off the bat. But that's what gives servant leaders the edge, because these principles that we're talking about actually build trust over time, and people respond to that kind of leadership. So when they see that their boss or their leadership team has their best interest in mind, you'll see that they'll be more engaged. As far as if you want to set yourself apart, well, I would start with developing listening skills, because that's another core strength of the servant leader. Invite different perspectives cross-functionally or even below you before making a tough decision. Another strength is engaging your people in the vision. So you want to listen to their collective voices, right, about how to get from here to there. Mm-hmm. That's how you build. But, it's going to take someone that opts selflessly. It's for the good of others. And you're still keeping the eye on the prize. So there's going to be business outcomes attached at the end. And by the way, this is really interesting. Howard Schultz, I don't know if you saw this last week, the CEO and founder of Starbucks, which, by the way, operates very much like a servant leadership company. He wrote this great article published in the New York Times. Get a chance to catch that. He wrote it on the same day as the GOP candidates debated on Fox, and yeah, which obviously was for that reason. But he called his article "America Deserves a Servant Leader," and he talks about how a servant leader would make a great president. How this person would unite both parties, right? Democrats and Republicans now working together, uniting the whole country, not dividing it. Imagine that. And Schultz even goes as far as suggesting that the servant leader would be courageous enough to select a member of the other party as a running mate. And that is true. That's what a servant leader would do. And personally, I would love to see some of the same ideas in the business world where, people unite toward a common cause, where a company feels more like a family. So often I see opposing agendas and conflict at the highest level. That speaks more about their own power and self-interest. And, I've seen unclear goals and expectations being communicated down to middle managers who then don't really know what to do at the staff level. And all of this leads to some very frustrated employees.
I think many of our readers and listeners are big fans of Jim Collins and the book Good to Great. And I've heard you kind of make a connection that the principles of servant leadership are very similar to what Collins describes as level 5 leadership. Tell us about that. What are the similarities?
Yeah, I think the biggest similarities are really it's in the paradoxes of each style. I mean, level 5 says you display humility plus fear resolve, right? Those are polar opposites, and you can kind of connect the dots there to servant and leadership, two opposing forces. So, and there are many other similarities, like, for example, how each style of leadership will credit others for the work. They never take the spotlight. And even when, results are poor and things don't go well, they're the first ones to take the blame. And in both leadership styles, they're going to do whatever it takes to produce great business outcomes. So we can't forget the balance there, as you have the noble traits of both the level 5 and the servant leadership, but you still have the person that is driven to success and driven to results.
And in addition to the webinar that we've scheduled for later this year, you've also authored some articles for Carrier Management where you outlined the 6 principles associated with servant leadership. Don't need you to go into detail because our readers can read about it in the articles, but just tell us a little bit about what those 6 principles are.
Sure. Well, in research literature over the last, I would say, 30 years, there's evidence to suggest that there's about 10 typical behaviors that correlate to servant leadership. So what I did is I chose 6 of them that I feel are most relevant to building a healthy organization for insurance carriers, to build up their leadership structure. So the webinar is going to cover the 6 principles of how great leaders, 1, display authenticity, 2, how they value their people, 3 is how they develop their people, 4 is how they provide leadership, 5 is how they share leadership, and last but not least is how they build community, a healthy community of work.
You've already described a little bit about what our listeners will learn at the upcoming webinar, but tell us a little more, I guess. What can they expect, and how can they sign up for the webinars?
Yeah, this is the first of 2 webinars we're calling, the title is six servant leadership practices that drive performance and increase your bottom line. We chose that title because we want to make sure that people in upper management understand that there is a business case for this. So we're going to basically uncover what research is saying are the standards for creating a healthy and profitable organization through servant leadership. So it's for anyone in a leadership or management role, or if you're in an HR position that is looking for a new leadership model to help develop your managers. This is really for you. So it will be held on September 8th.
Okay.
At 1:30 p.m. That's Eastern Standard. So September 8th, 1:30 p.m. And you can sign up on our website, leadershipfromthecore.com. That's leadershipfromthecore, CORE.com. Now, we're going to have a sign-up form there in a few days. So I want to make sure that people understand. So keep checking back because it's going to be posted soon. We just have to embed the code in there.
Want more information? Visit carriermanagement.com/signup and become a member today.